The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the Chicago courtroom like a final verdict on my entire life. The defendant, Lucas Rivera, is ordered to issue a full public correction and retraction within 48 hours, admitting that all accusations against Malik Thompson were false and without basis. The judge stated firmly, his words hitting me like a punch to the gut. I sat there, Malik Thompson, 34, successful marketing director at a top Chicago firm, feeling the room spin as the reality sank in. My ex, Lucas, the man I had loved and built a business with for 3 years, had spread those vicious lies about me embezzling funds and using our relationship to cover shady deals. The court had seen through it all, but now the correction would make everything public. Our past romance, the pain of our breakup, the prejudice I'd always feared. This win felt hollow. It was the unexpected consequence that forced me to confront everything I'd buried. As the bailiff cleared the room, I stood up slowly, my suit feeling too tight, my breath shallow. Lucas avoided my eyes, his face ashen as his lawyer whispered to him. How had we gotten here? The lies had started 6 months after our split, when Lucas lost the firm we co-founded to me in the settlement. He couldn't handle the rejection, so he tried to ruin my career with whispers to clients and posts on industry forums, hinting at personal indiscretions that were code for our gay relationship. It had cost me 2 major contracts, sleepless nights, and almost my sanity. But now the court was making him fix it publicly. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister in Iowa. Call Mom. There's talk online already. The family that barely accepted my lifestyle would now have it splashed across the news. I stepped out into the bright Chicago sun, the wind off Lake Michigan whipping my hair. A reporter shouted questions, but I pushed past, heading to my car. This was just the beginning. The public correction would not only clear my name but drag our history into the light, forcing me to deal with the internal war I'd been fighting, the fear of being seen as the gay man who couldn't keep his personal life separate from business. At home in my Lincoln Park apartment, I poured a glass of whiskey and stared at the city skyline. The retraction would go live tomorrow, and with it, every detail Lucas had twisted. I thought about the nights we had spent planning the firm, laughing over takeout, believing we could build something real in a world that still whispered behind our backs. Now that world would know. I picked up the phone and dialed my mother in Des Moines. Malik, what is this I'm hearing? She asked before I could speak, her voice tight with the same disappointment I'd heard when I first came out at 22. I tried to explain it was lies, that the court had ruled in my favor, but the words caught. She sighed, the sound heavy with years of quiet judgment. We'll talk when you come home for Thanksgiving. Just be careful. The call ended, leaving me more alone than ever. Later that evening, my best friend Sarah knocked on the door with Thai food and a bottle of wine. You won, Malik. That's what matters, she said, hugging me tight. But as we ate on the couch, I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. Winning the case meant Lucas had to admit the truth publicly, yet it also meant admitting to the world that we had been together, that I was gay in a way that couldn't be hidden anymore. Sarah squeezed my hand. You've carried this alone long enough. Maybe this is the push you needed. I nodded, but inside I wondered if I was ready for the push. The night stretched on, the city lights blurring through the window as I replayed every choice that had led me here. The decision to end things with Lucas when his jealousy grew too much, the choice to keep the firm and fight for my career. Each decision had consequences, and now they were all crashing down. By midnight, I was exhausted but wired, knowing tomorrow the correction would hit social media and news sites. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the weight of what came next pressing on my chest like the city itself. This court order wasn't just justice. It was the start of a journey I had avoided for years, one that would test every relationship I had and force me to decide who I truly wanted to be. The next morning, I woke to notifications exploding on my phone. Lucas had posted the retraction exactly as ordered. A detailed statement on LinkedIn, his personal site, and the old firm's page. I retract every claim I made against Malik Thompson. The allegations were false, motivated by personal resentment after our professional and personal separation. I apologize unreservedly for the harm caused to his reputation and career. The words were there in black and white, but the comments beneath told another story. Some praised the court for protecting gay professionals. Others sneered with old prejudices. One client I had lost texted me, "Glad this is cleared up. Let's talk contracts again." Small victories, but the bigger battle was just beginning. I dressed for work, choosing my sharpest suit, and headed to the office. Colleagues offered nods of support, but I felt their eyes lingering. In the conference room, my boss pulled me aside. "This publicity isn't ideal, Malik, but your work speaks for itself. Just keep your head down." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Keeping my head down had been my strategy for years, and now it was impossible. Lunch brought a surprise call from Lucas. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Malik, I did what the court said. Can we talk?" His voice was raw, the same voice that once whispered promises in the dark. I agreed to meet after work at a quiet cafe near the Riverwalk, the kind of place we used to go when things were good. As I walked there, the sun warming the sidewalks, I replayed our last fight. The one where he accused me of choosing the firm over him, where I admitted I couldn't live with his constant need for control. The cafe smelled of coffee and fresh pastries. Lucas was already there, looking thinner, eyes tired. "I'm sorry," he said before I sat down. "The lies, I was angry. I wanted to hurt you the way you hurt me." I listened, the words landing like stones in still water. This conversation was the first real step toward whatever came next, and I knew it would change everything. By the time I left the cafe, the sun was setting over the river, casting long shadows that matched the ones in my heart. The court order had forced the retraction, but the real correction, the one inside me, was only starting. I walked home through the bustling streets, feeling the city pulse around me, a reminder that life kept moving no matter how much my world had shifted. Tomorrow would bring more calls, more stares, but tonight I allowed myself one quiet moment of relief. I had won the case, but the real victory would be learning to live openly with the truth the court had dragged into the light. The weeks after the retraction blurred into a whirlwind of meetings and quiet reflections that forced me to revisit every chapter of my life with Lucas. I found myself driving to the old warehouse district where our firm had started, the building now sold and repurposed into lofts. Sitting in my car, I remembered the day we signed the lease, both of us 29 and full of dreams. Lucas had been the creative force, sketching logos late into the night while I handled the client pitches. We were more than business partners. We were each other's safe harbor in a city that didn't always feel safe for two gay men making their mark. One evening after a long day at the new firm, I pulled out old photos on my laptop. There we were at Pride, arms around each other, laughing under rainbow flags. The memory stung because the breakup had been my choice. Lucas wanted to go public with our relationship at work. I wanted to keep it separate to protect the business. "You're ashamed of us," he had shouted the night it ended. I denied it then, but sitting here now, I wondered if he had been right. The lies he spread later were born from that pain, twisting our shared history into something ugly to clients, claiming I used our intimacy to steal ideas. The court saw the emails, the texts, the proof of his campaign, and now the world had the correction. But the correction didn't erase the nights I spent doubting myself, wondering if being gay meant I had to choose between love and success. My family visit that weekend amplified everything. I drove to Des Moines, the cornfields stretching endlessly, each mile a reminder of the boy who left home at 18 to escape the sideways glances. Mom met me at the door with a tight hug. "The neighbors saw the news," she said quietly over coffee. Dad stayed in the garage, tinkering with the truck, his silence louder than words. My sister pulled me aside in the kitchen. "They're trying, Malik. Just give them time." Time. That's what I had asked for with Lucas too, and look where it led. That night in my childhood bedroom, I stared at the ceiling posters of city skylines I had pinned up as a kid, dreaming of Chicago. The court order had forced Lucas to admit the lies, but it also forced me to admit I had never fully owned who I was. I called Sarah on the drive back, voice cracking as I described the weekend. "You're not the same person who hid everything," she said. "This is your chance to choose differently." Back in Chicago, work offered a distraction. A new campaign for a local nonprofit pulled me in, the team energized by my ideas. Yet every email from a client carried an undercurrent, some congratulating the win, others probing for details. One afternoon, Lucas texted again. "The retraction is done. Can we clear the air completely?" I agreed to another meeting, this time at the lakefront. The wind whipped off the water as we walked the path, Lucas looking smaller than I remembered. "I was wrong to drag our relationship into it," he admitted, stopping to face me. "I thought if I made you hurt the way I did, it would fix something. It didn't." I listened, the waves lapping at the shore matching the rhythm of my thoughts. This conversation was another correction, one the court couldn't order but I needed. We didn't hug when we parted, but the air between us felt lighter. Driving home, I realized the betrayal had been a mirror, showing me the parts of myself I had kept hidden even from me. The next day at the office, I made a decision. I updated my LinkedIn to include a subtle rainbow pin in my profile photo, small, but mine. Colleagues noticed. Some smiled. One in turn high-fived me in the break room. The small acts built momentum. Evenings were for reflection. I started journaling, pages filling with the choices that defined me. Ending things with Lucas to protect my career, pushing my family to accept me on my terms, fighting the lawsuit instead of settling quietly. Each entry ended with a question: what next? The retraction had cleared my name professionally, but personally it opened doors I had nailed shut. One night I met a new colleague, Ethan, at a networking event. His easy smile and quiet confidence felt like fresh air. We talked for hours about design and life in the city, nothing heavy, but the conversation lingered. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of the past crushing the present. The court order had started this chain, forcing Lucas's public admission and, in turn, my private awakening. I drove home that night with the windows down, the city lights reflecting on the river like possibilities. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt ready to walk it without hiding. The misunderstanding hit at the worst possible time. Ethan had asked me to coffee after the networking event, and I said yes without thinking how it might look to Lucas, who still followed my social media. The photo of us laughing outside the cafe went viral in our small industry circle, and Lucas called the next morning, voice tight with old pain. "Already moving on?" The retraction wasn't enough. I tried to explain it was just coffee, but the words felt hollow even to me. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the phone, the old guilt resurfacing. This was the consequence of the correction. Not just public, but personal ripples that kept pulling me back. I met Sarah for lunch to sort through it. "You're allowed to live, Malik," she said over salads in Millennium Park. "Lucas made his choices. You made yours." She was right, but the internal voice whispered otherwise. That afternoon at work, I received an email from a potential client who had seen the photo and the retraction. "Appreciate the transparency," it read. Transparency. The word stuck with me as I walked through the office, nodding at colleagues who now knew more about my life than I had ever volunteered. One older executive pulled me aside. "I've got a son who's gay," he said quietly. "Seeing you fight this, it means something." His words landed like validation I hadn't known I needed, yet they also highlighted the pressure. I was now a symbol whether I wanted to be or not. The family group chat exploded that evening with articles linking the retraction to gay professional drama in Chicago. Mom's message was short: "We love you, but please keep it private." Dad didn't reply. The pressure built until I booked a flight home for the weekend, determined to face it head-on. The drive from the airport felt longer than usual, the familiar fields blurring past. At dinner, the conversation skirted the edges until my sister brought it up. "Malik won the case, Mom. That should be the story." Mom set her fork down. "The story is that our son's personal life is now public because of a man he chose to be with." The words stung, but instead of retreating, I spoke. "That man was part of my life, and the lies hurt me. I'm not ashamed of who I am." The table fell silent, but something shifted. Dad nodded once, the smallest acknowledgement I had ever received. The weekend ended with cautious hugs, the first crack in years of tension. Back in Chicago, I called Lucas to clear the air about Ethan. We met at the same cafe, this time the tension different. I overreacted, he admitted. The retraction forced me to see how much I still cared. But you deserve to move forward. His honesty surprised me, and for the first time since the court date, I saw the man I had fallen for, flawed but capable of growth. We parted with a handshake that lingered, the gesture carrying more weight than words. That night, Ethan texted about a gallery opening. I went, the evening filled with easy conversation and shared laughs. Walking home, I realized the misunderstanding with Lucas had been another turning point, forcing me to choose honesty over old guilt. The next week at work, I pitched a new campaign focused on inclusivity, drawing from my own journey. The team loved it, and my boss gave me the lead. Each decision, the call to Lucas, the honest talk with family, the yes to Ethan, built on the last, turning the court's correction into my own personal evolution. The days settled into a new rhythm. Mornings at the gym, afternoons in meetings, evenings exploring the city with Ethan or alone with my thoughts. One Saturday, I visited the old firm's new location, standing outside the glass doors where Lucas and I had once cut the ribbon. The past felt distant now, the pain softened by time and the forced reckoning. I texted Lucas a simple, "Thank you for the retraction." His reply came quickly, "Thank you for the fight." The exchange closed a chapter without reopening old wounds. As fall leaves turned the parks golden, I felt lighter, the identity crisis that had gripped me for years loosening its hold. The court order had been the catalyst, but my choices, confronting family, clearing the air with Lucas, opening to new possibilities with Ethan, were the real correction. Life in Chicago continued its steady pulse, and for the first time, I walked through it without looking over my shoulder. The confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday when Lucas showed up at my office unannounced. Security called me down, and there he stood in the lobby, rain dripping from his coat, eyes determined. "We need to talk about the real reason I spread those lies," he said. I led him to a conference room, the city gray outside the windows matching the mood. He sat across from me, hands clasped. "It wasn't just jealousy over the firm. I was scared you'd never love me the way I loved you, so I tried to make sure no one else could either." The admission hung in the air, raw and unexpected. I listened as he detailed the nights after our breakup when anger turned to bitterness, the emails he regretted sending. "The court made me correct the public record, but I owe you the private one too." His words cracked something open in me. I told him about the family weekend, the small progress with my parents, the way the retraction had forced me to stop hiding. We talked for an hour, the rain tapping the glass like a metronome to our honesty. When he left, we hugged briefly, the first contact since the split, and it felt like closure rather than reopening. That evening, I met Ethan for dinner, sharing the conversation over pasta in a cozy Italian spot. Ethan listened without judgment, his hand reaching across the table. "You're handling this with more grace than most," he said. His support grounded me, a reminder that new beginnings didn't erase the past but built on it. Work the next day brought another test. A major client called, referencing the retraction in the meeting. "We admire how you handled the situation," the CEO said. "It shows character." The praise felt earned, but it also carried the weight of being defined by the scandal. I used the moment to pitch an expanded campaign, channeling the experience into something positive. The client signed on the spot, the deal my largest yet. Driving home, I reflected on the chain of events, the lies, the lawsuit, the correction, the confrontation. Each step had demanded a decision. Fight or fold, hide or speak. I chose to speak, and the results were starting to show. The weekend brought a family video call. Mom asked about work, Dad mentioned the new client, and my sister teased me about Ethan after seeing a photo I posted. The conversation felt normal, the prejudice softening into cautious acceptance. "We're proud of how you stood up for yourself," Mom said at the end. The words landed softly, healing old wounds. I hung up smiling, the city lights twinkling beyond my window. Later, Lucas texted a photo of the old firm's logo he had saved. "We built something good before it went bad. I'm glad you're still building." The message carried no bitterness, only maturity. I replied with a thumbs up, the simple exchange marking another milestone. Monday brought rain again, but inside the office it felt bright. Ethan stopped by for lunch, and we walked the Riverwalk under umbrellas, talking about everything and nothing. His presence felt right, a natural extension of the growth the court order had sparked. That night, alone, I updated my journal with a new entry. The correction wasn't just Lucas's words, it was mine too. The realization settled deep. The confrontation had been the pivot, forcing honesty that cleared the last shadows. As October turned to November, the leaves fell and so did the last remnants of my old fears. Life moved forward with purpose. The betrayal transformed into fuel for something stronger. I felt ready for whatever came next, the city around me alive with the same possibility I now carried inside. The public retraction day arrived with a crisp November wind sweeping through Chicago. Lucas posted the final corrected statement exactly as ordered, this time with a video attached. Him looking straight at the camera, voice steady. "I was wrong. Malik Thompson is an honest, talented professional, and our past relationship had nothing to do with any misconduct. I apologized to him, his family, and everyone affected." The video spread quickly, comments shifting from outrage to respect. I watched it at my desk, the office buzzing around me, and felt the final piece click into place. This was the moment the court had demanded, but it was also the moment I had been waiting for, public proof that the lies were gone. Clients flooded my inbox with congratulations. One old contact who had pulled out called immediately. "Let's restart that project," he said. The win felt complete professionally, but personally it opened the floodgates. My phone rang with Mom's voice, softer than before. "We saw the video. Your father and I were glad it's over." The call lasted 20 minutes, the longest honest talk we'd had in years. Dad even got on the line, gruff but sincere. "You handled yourself like a man." The words meant more than any court ruling. Lucas called that afternoon. "It's done," he said simply. We met at the lakefront again, the water sparkling under clear skies. "Thank you for not making it uglier than it had to be," I told him. He nodded, the tension between us finally dissolved. "I'm seeing someone too," he shared. "Someone who isn't afraid to be out. It's teaching me things I should have learned with you." The admission brought relief rather than pain. We parted as friends, the kind who had survived the fire and emerged stronger. That evening, Ethan and I cooked dinner at my apartment, the kitchen filled with laughter and the smell of garlic. He had followed the story from the beginning, never pushing, always present. Over wine, I told him everything, the lawsuit, the family tension, the confrontation. He listened, then pulled me into a hug. "You're incredible," he whispered. The moment stretched, warm and real, the kind of connection I had been afraid to seek. We stepped out onto the balcony later. The city spread below us like a promise. The retraction had cleared the path, and now I walked it freely. The following week brought a promotion at work, the campaign I led winning industry recognition. At the celebration, colleagues raised glasses, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to downplay my life. Ethan was there, fitting seamlessly. The night ended with us walking home hand in hand, the streets alive with holiday lights. The journey that started with the gavel had reached a high point. Not just the legal win, but the personal one. I had faced betrayal, prejudice, and my own fears, making choices that shaped a better version of me. Lucas's correction had been the spark. My decisions had been the fire. As December approached, the city prepared for winter, and I prepared for a future without the shadows that once defined me. The growth felt complete, yet I knew it was only the beginning of living fully. The holiday season wrapped Chicago in lights and cheer, and with it came the final chapter of the story the court had started. I flew home to Des Moines for Thanksgiving, the car ride from the airport filled with easy conversation with my sister. Mom greeted me with a real hug, Dad with a firm handshake and a quiet, "Good to have you." Over turkey, the conversation flowed naturally, work updates, my new relationship with Ethan, even a mention of Lucas's retraction. "We're proud of how you handled everything," Mom said, passing the potatoes. The words settled like a warm blanket, healing years of distance. The weekend ended with family photos on the porch, the first time I felt completely seen. Back in the city, Ethan and I decorated my apartment together, stringing lights across the windows. Lucas sent a holiday card, simple, sincere. "Wishing you peace and success. You earned it." I replied with the same, the exchange closing the loop beautifully. Work celebrated with a party where my campaign won an award, the room applauding as I accepted it. In my speech, I thanked the team and, quietly, the journey that had brought me here. Ethan waited afterward with flowers, his smile the brightest part of the night. One quiet evening, we walked the same riverwalk where Lucas and I had talked months earlier. Snow dusted the path, the city glowing around us. Ethan stopped under a street lamp. "I'm glad the court forced that correction," he said. "It brought you to this version of yourself." I pulled him close, the embrace warm against the cold. In that moment, everything aligned, the betrayal, the fight, the growth, the love. The journey had been painful, filled with misunderstandings, sacrifices, and hard choices, but each one had led here. As the new year approached, I reflected on how far I had come. The court order had been the shock, the public correction the consequence, but the real story was the man who emerged, open, resilient, authentic. Malik Thompson, no longer hiding, no longer defined by the past. The city lights twinkled as I stood on my balcony, Ethan's arm around me, the future stretching bright and full of possibility. True or false? A court-ordered public correction from a former lover can truly resolve the pain of betrayal and the struggle for authentic identity in our society?